and welcome at this press conference for the launch of the Coalition for Digital Intelligence. Welcome everyone at home who's watching. We are live here from New York at the Sustainable Development Impact Summit. And we'll be talking a little bit about this Coalition for Digital Intelligence with three panelists. Right next to me is Karen McCabe. Karen is the Senior Director for Technology Policy and International Affairs at the IEEE. And I'll ask you, Karen, what the IEEE is in just a second. Then there is Yoo-Hyun Park. Yoo-Hyun is the founder and the Chief Executive Officer of the DQ Institute in Singapore. Hails originally from Korea. And then Eric White. Eric is the project lead for Internet for All and a Global Leadership Fellow as well at the World Economic Forum, where, of course, we're at right now. And then joining us just now is Gabriela Ramos, the Special Counselor to the OECD Secretary General, and also Chief of Staff at OECD Sherpa. OECD, of course, is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. I think it's based in Paris in Europe, is that right?
Yep.
Very well. Without further ado, again, welcome at this press conference to everyone watching the live stream. I want to start with Gabriela after she takes a quick sip of the water. Gabriela, because we are here to talk about the launch of the Coalition for Digital Intelligence. I understand that digital intelligence is sort of a combination of digital literacy and digital skills, which is what we all need. Everyone in the world in this fourth industrial revolution, the bright new world in which we live. And a lot of people are actually investing in this. I mean, this is something that, billions of dollars are being invested in increasing this digital intelligence. Companies are doing this, governments are doing this. So why do we actually need, a coalition for digital intelligence? Why can't we just let, all companies and all governments invest in this? What's the problem?
Well, the problem is that we don't have common definitions and understanding of what do we mean by that. And therefore, if we do not have a common framework to understand the content of what do we mean by digital intelligence, it will be much more difficult to guide institutions and to advise policymakers on the right policies to foster these skills. And therefore, with the DQ and with the IEEE, we joined forces. The OECD, of course, has the frameworks for education, but also for future of work and digital strategy. But the whole point is, how do we not only ensure that people can thrive the digital world and deal with the technological change, but shape it? And how can they become not technology takers, but also developers and people that can use this amazing knowledge base that we have in the current world to address the challenges that we are confronting, no? On inequality, on inclusive growth, on climate, so it's this sense of agency that we need to nurture in individuals and students to use technology and make that the technology serves humankind and not the other way around. And for that, it's very complex because people go for coding, and it seems that then the mean became an end in itself. Coding is a mean,
right.
It's not an end. Then we go to teach STEM, or we go, those are very important elements, but we need to frame them in a way that really contributes to build a better world. And
right.
That's why we are joining this coalition that is very forceful in terms of the reach and the impact.
Right, and so this idea that, we all need, of course, digital skills, that much is clear. We all need to develop that digital intelligence, but we can't just do it each on our own, every country on its own, every sector on its own. We really sort of need to develop a common standard of digital intelligence. That's basically what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying, and actually we are building up this framework with our partner institutions. But at the OECD, we also have Education 2030 that is developing all these definitions, and we are integrating it in the only international standardized instrument that we have to measure a student's outcomes, and then translating that into what do you need to do in the education system, what do you need to do in the labor institutions to foster this knowledge and management of technology for improving the outcomes of people.
Right, and the OECD, of course, has been doing that for decades, sort of developing these standards and these tests for countries that it's member countries, and sort of measuring the outcomes, seeing who's performing better on certain metrics, and by doing that, by being able to measure that, to compare, it is also able to sort of give advice on how can you actually improve on this, which is the ultimate goal, of course, of also this initiative.
And also, how do you exert change in the way the education system functions, for example? Instead of just transmitting knowledge, that it was the traditional role of these systems, how do you move forward into skills, social-emotional competencies, for example, teamwork, creative thinking, all these elements, being able to discriminate information, and then to a higher end, which is values and attitudes and understanding, because we are also living in a highly integrated world where you need all these competencies to thrive, but also to contribute to more sustainable societies.
Absolutely. And okay, very well. But so I understand what the OECD's role in this. Now, you're not alone. As a matter of fact, this initiative is a result of a collaboration between, on the one hand, of course, the OECD. On the other hand, there's also the IEEE and the DQ Institute, as well as, of course, the World Economic Forum. I want to turn to you now, Karen, and ask you, well, first of all, I should ask, what does IEEE stand for, that lovely acronym? You already told me in the introduction that it's the Institute, I want to get this right, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers.
Yes.
And what you do is you're the voice of the technical community, you told me, and also an organization that sets standards for the technology sector. So tell us a little bit more about your organization, and also what the role then is of the technology sector in developing this digital intelligence.
Sure. So you got the acronym correct.
Great.
We are a very large professional association. We're made up of about 420,000 members around the world in pretty much every country. And the foundation of IEEE, really, it's 42 technical societies and councils. So we have a really large technical community. And as you noted, we're also a global standards developer as well. So you know, for us, our tagline at the IEEE is about advancing technology for humanity.
Right.
And we take that very seriously. It's, you know, there's technologies advancing at such a rapid rate, especially in the ICT sector. And, you know, you just can't put technology out there and not really understand the ramifications of that, the impact of that on social and economic aspects, as well as human well-being, as, you know, we've been hearing. So we, as being a voice of the technical community and having such a technical foundation underneath us and being a standards developer, we feel really strongly that industry also has a role. You know, the role in addressing digital literacy and skills and competencies, all stakeholders need to be involved, as well as, you know, the technical sectors and including even standards developers have to be involved in that. So we sort of look at it from sort of three perspectives, if you sort of want to break it down. One is, you know, every day we use technology. We're using devices, we're interfacing with software, the various platforms. And if you think about it one way, that we're basically sort of learning by using those devices and those softwares and those platforms. We're refining our skills, we're reinforcing our skills. And sometimes, you know, when we're developing that technology and standardizing it, that may not be a thought in the forefront of the developers' mindset when they're developing these products and devices and services. You know, another perspective is thinking about it in the context of direct training. Many devices and software that are put out there by the industry sector have associated training and support with it. And with that, you know, they're sort of developing either very intentionally or indirectly training around that software or those and those aspects of it. So to a certain degree, you know, there's skills training happening there, but is it being done in a way that's being comprehensive. It's really taking all the dimensions of digital literacy and competency into consideration, other than this is how you use my product and the best way or the efficient way to use that. And, the third is also, there are, many, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, there are so many various organizations and entities and initiatives addressing digital literacy, and including in the industry sector, because they do want to make a very good contribution to how we can solve some of the challenges that we're having. So, they create maybe their own frameworks about how to address the challenges. They may be leveraging various frameworks that are out there. And that can cause some challenges with not having a common definition, with eventually not having a sort of a set of good indicators so that we can really see collectively, are we moving that needle in the right direction? Are we really addressing these challenges?
Right.
So at the IEEE, we've been working with our partners and as well as with the World Economic Forum with its Internet for All initiative. And we had some common working groups on digital literacy. And the IEEE group under the IEEE Internet Initiative took a really deep dive into the various frameworks that are out there, taking these issues into consideration. And what really rose to the top as the most comprehensive framework was the DQ Institute's framework. And with that, we decided that we would like to standardize that as an IEEE global standard. So we're in early days about that, but we hope to move down that path so that from an industry sector perspective and even an end user perspective, there's a level of a global standard that can be adopted and used by industry, that can be recognized by governments, civil society organizations, and everyone pretty much in the ecosystem. So we have a set of common definitions and indicators that we're all working off of so that we can do effective measurement and that we can build and innovate upon that to make a difference on the issue.
Yeah, and you gave a perfect plug there for me to turn to you, Hyun. But before I do, I just want to get, is it possible to make that concrete by perhaps one example, this problem of these separate initiatives? I mean, we think, of course, of, for example, the internet, as simple as the internet and sort of how we identify a website. Isn't that already standardized? So where's the problem of things not being standardized? Can you give an example of that?
In the sense of the digital literacy
Yep.
issues, there are many frameworks out there, and I'm sure Yuan can actually talk more specifically to it. But one way of looking at it is, I think we have a common set of a goal of how we want to address. We know digital literacy is a challenge because it does affect well-being, it does affect economic and social development, and if we're not really being conscious about it in a sense of having a common framework that is really addressing the multiple dimensions of it and a common definition and having ultimately a set of common indicators on it, it just kind of almost exacerbates some of the challenges because we can't have effective measurement, and it can cause confusion to the end user and ultimately the consumer who are using these various products. And then if you think about it from a developing country perspective, many of us on sort of the Western side of the world are very familiar with technology, and then there's digital natives, children that are just sort of born into it. But you have developing parts of the world that we have to be really conscious about when we're connecting them to digital technology and into this online world, that we're doing it very with a level of responsibility and consciousness, and basically so that we can hopefully learn from the journey that we've been on and maybe some of the challenges or findings that we had along that way, so that they are using the internet and the digital devices safely, securely. There's a level this coalition is called the Coalition for Digital Intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's not just encompassing how do I use a browser or how do I develop, or to your point, coding. It's really about looking at these various aspects that do impact well-being as well. Yeah,
very well. So then let's turn to you, Hyun. Hyun, you're based in Singapore and you lead the DQ Institute there. That's the Digital Intelligence Quotient Institute, if I get that right. You actually have looked at many different frameworks. I think about 20 or so existing frameworks, and now you're working on a single framework which is called the DQ, Digital Quotient Intelligence Quotient Framework. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you're developing that?
Sure. Before we go into the details, I think it is important for us to set the actually context. I think this is a very significant moment in a way that OECD representing governments and education sectors, IEEE is representing industry and technology, and we DQ Institute from academic and civic sectors, and then World Economic Forum as a conveners, bringing all these different stakeholders coming together. And we gather here with the aim of setting the global standard of digital intelligence beyond literacy and skills. Answering your questions, usually industry use the term digital skills. And different company and different industry, if you ask what is digital skill, they will have 10 different or 1,000 different answers. And governments and the education sectors are using digital literacy. But if you're asking the Singapore government, what is digital literacy? The definition will be different from the US government and the other governments. And each NGO will have different answers. So along that line, I think it is very important for us to have the common language. That's where we are coming from. When I and our teams actually developed the digital intelligence, to us it was how to be a human in this age of the digital age of AI and technology. Giving you more of a context, if you look at the education sector and technology sectors, what are the three greatest fears right now? So number one is humans are getting obsolete because machines are getting smarter and smarter.
Right.
And we believe that humans are, in some point, will be inferior to the machines. Right? That is a big fear.
It's a big fear, yes.
Yep. And fear number two, because of that, the education sectors are looking for how to make our children smart enough to compete against machines. So that's why we talk about coding, STEM, or sometimes we talk about soft skills. But more bigger fears, number three, is about the technology is not very safe. Fake news, misinformation, online radicalization, and smartphone addictions, all these issues are really tangible. Our study shows that more than 56% of children aged 8 to 12 years old around the world are affected by at least one of these cyber dangers. This leads to decreasing trust towards the technology companies, governments, and all affecting even democracy. So in these situations, what is the solutions?
Right.
So everybody says solution is education. Then what educations? So we have to really look at what is the truth in there. The truth is, actually, every child is fearfully and wonderfully created. Right? We are here with the same belief that technology is only meaningful when it enhances humanity, like you said. Technology is made for human, not the other way around. So it is so important for us to remind this truth to every individual and every child that you are a master of technology, not the slave of it or replacement of it. I think that is a core spirit of digital intelligence.
Right.
And what is then the skills that we need to teach? We always use the horse analogy, right? We are slower than horse, but we don't compete against the horse. We actually ride horse. So it is important for us to tell the children that you're not compete against AI. We need to teach children how to ride and drive AI. It's exactly what Gabriela just said. It is not just about take technology, how to shape technology, right? It takes, as Gabriela described, it takes more than skills. It's knowledge, skills, attitude, and values. It's cognitive, metacognitive, social, emotional capability. So it's actually not just about ICT skills and computational skills and analytical skills, but it also has to think about critical thinking. right? How to discern the right information from the bad information. Also, it talks about the self-control. We want children to have a self-control so that they can balance screen time, not to fall into the tech addiction. But thirdly, when it comes to fake news and all this issue, it is not just about the cognitive and metacognitive skills. It's really about ethics.
Yeah.
We are entering into the unfiltered, uncensored digital world. That means we need to have a filter in our side. More important issue is what is the human value in there. Absolutely about we want our children to be loving and caring in their communication in digital world. We want them to resilience about fighting against privacy invasions, cyber threats, and security issue. So all this in encompassing actually concept is digital intelligence, and that's how we actually want to frame. And we're working with the OECD to construct based on the OECD future learning framework, so that it can be adopted in any government. It can be also utilized in any company and organization.
Yeah, and so you've developed that sort of single framework and that concept really of what is digital intelligence, much more beyond the digital skills. You talked about self-control, you talked about ethics, you talked about values, and so it shows really that it's much, very much needed to have that comprehensive perspective on what is digital intelligence. So now we've got that idea of what is digital intelligence. You're working with the OECD, IEEE, and we're building this coalition. And I want to turn to Eric now, the final speaker of today. So you've developed with the World Economic Forum and the partners here today this coalition. Now, if we have a single definition of what is digital intelligence, why do we need a coalition to drive that forward? What's the role of the coalition in this initiative?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, I mean, I think today is a first step. Yeah, I want to note how remarkable it is that we're able, through the platform of the World Economic Forum, to take an ongoing piece of work that's a collaboration between a major trendsetter in education and an organization that sets standards in technology and align these so that the world is working together on this. But what we have now is the intention to do this and the beginning of processes for institutional legitimization on both sides. But once the DQ framework is legitimized, there's still a lot of work to do. There's a process that will be triggered on both sides, in the technology space and in the educational space, to help companies and governments adopt this framework, make it work with what they already have, find a way to report on it so that we, the global community, have a sense of what is the baseline level of digital intelligence in the world, which is something we don't know right now. And once we know that, we'll be able to know how it's improving over time and where, what's working, and we'll be able to start marshaling resources towards the things that work and away from the things that don't. And if we all do this together, it'll be much more effective. So the coordination of that whole piece is the role of the coalition, to help everybody work together to identify what works and where we are and align across several sectors to move forward as humanity.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. Now, you know, we're with the people here today who play sort of or the organizations at least, who've played a leading role in the creation of this coalition. If there's people or organizations back at home from wherever they're watching that want to play a role in this as well, what's a way to contribute to this, and perhaps where can people find even more information about the coalition?
Yeah. So we are launching a website. coalitionfordigitalintelligence.org, I believe properly. So that'll go in the press release that we're announcing, that we're releasing simultaneous to this press conference. And from there, you can go click through the framework, you can also go to Yuyun's website, the DQ Institute, which has it all up, which I'll let her say, so I don't get it wrong. And I think familiarize yourself with this. If you're a student in school, you can talk about it with your teachers. If you work at a technology company, start thinking about the competencies that you are assuming that your users have as you're designing software, and think about how you can use your software to help teach these skills. This is as much of an individual change that we're hoping to catalyze as an institutional one. So there's room for everybody.
Excellent. So, if I understand it correctly, we're launching this coalition right now,
Right now.
and people who do want to contribute to this can do so. I want to repeat that one more time. The website, I believe, is Coalition on Digital Intelligence. For Digital Intelligence. Good that we get that straight. Coalition for Digital Intelligence.org, which will be active as of very soon, I suppose.
As of now.
As of now, and we're also distributing a press release where people can read a little bit more about this coalition that's being launched right here in New York. I want to thank all the panelists for being here today, and thank you all for tuning in for this press conference. And remember, the Coalition for Digital Intelligence is being launched right now. Thank you all for this presence.
Thank you.
Thank you.